I'm still on my journey of mastering my temper. It's a lifelong journey. So for this talk, I'm going to give you the start of it and talk you all the way through to where I'm at to now. I'm African born, got both my parents from Uganda. So I would say with parents, you inherit genetics, but you also inherit some of their temperaments, shall we say. So one of the things that I inherited from my father was his temper. Not just me, my other siblings too. So I would say we are very fiery. We're quiet, but we can be very fiery, and we're always ready to go. And so it worked out to be like a double-edged sword. One good thing about having a temper is it can keep you focused. So if someone aggravates you, you can be like, okay, I'm going to focus solely on proving that person wrong, or solely I want to solely destroy this person. So it is a double-edged sword, but all in all, I say it's a double-edged sword because while you can use it for good, you're really poisoning yourself as well at the same time. So what tends to happen when you're using your temper is you end up fueling yourself with negativity. And that's what I found in myself at the start. And I've been fueling myself with negativity from as long as I can remember, since primary school, secondary school, all the way up to university. I've got this tool in my box, this temper tool, and it's driving me. And it's got me to the point where I've got a career. And it was round about when I just started my career. And I remember getting there and I realized I've been working so hard to get to this point, and it meant nothing to me. There was no worse feeling than that, realizing that you spent a number of years getting to that point, and then you realize, oh, this means absolutely nothing to me. Is this what I've been building myself up for? Just taking a step back, my parents put me on this journey because when you're from an African descent, you're either a engineer, lawyer, or a disgrace. Those are your options. So I chose the engineering route, and as with all parents, they will always try to guide you down the path that's right for them. So I went down this path, and then once I got to the end and I realized, okay, I got to my career, my parents built this image up, and I realized this wasn't my image, it was my parents' image. Again, using this tool temper, I was so focused. So after realizing that, I sat at my job and I was like, okay, I need to do something about this. I need to do something what I want to do. So then it just so happened I always wanted to do martial arts. My father, he was a Bruce Lee fan, watched all the movies. That's what got me, and that's when I said, okay, let me see if I can find a martial arts school. I was looking for Jeet Kune Do at the time. Luckily enough, I was able to find it. And so the first view was to be like, okay, I'm going to be exactly like Bruce Lee, powerful, fast, and everything else like that. But I also found many other things as well. So one of the first things I found out is that I'm not Bruce Lee, and Bruce Lee's not me. That's the first thing that I did find out. But what I did find out is that there was a lot of mental benefits that I did not realize when I first started. So when I came in, it was purely about the physical. You go in there, you train, you work real hard, punch, kick, spar, body conditioning, the whole works. But then what I started to realize as I started sparring a lot more is that I would usually wait. I'd be really angry. I'd have this nervous energy in my stomach. You guys know it. When you guys first spar, you get that nervous energy. So what I used to do is I say, okay, I let the person I'm sparring with, I'm gonna let you have the first strike. Hit me in my face. You get the temper going. Then I'll start responding. That worked to a degree, but then you realize it doesn't work so much. It's not so effective, especially as you spar more advanced people. Because what you have a tendency to do is kind of like you're so focused on just injuring that person, but you forget about everything else, self-awareness. It's kind of the best analogy I could ever give you is kind of, Bruce Lee gave the analogy of, when your cup is full of water, no one else can pour into your cup because your cup is already full. So my cup was filled with all this negativity, all this temper, which helped me get through the early years of my life. But now it's become this poison chalice now to me. So now I'm always filled with negativity. I mean, I remember sitting one time at work, I was so angry, so negative that I ended up getting into a dizzy state. Nothing happened, just so much rage. As I continued training, every punch, every kick, every spar, it felt like this negative water was seeping out. So someone had poked a hole, and for every time I went training, it just seeped out unexpectedly to me. And what I found out once it was fully drained, what I found now was that whenever I go into a spa, I'm no longer thinking about destroying. I'm taking in the information. I'm actually seeing what the other person can do. So now they're giving me information, how they move, where they're looking when they're striking, for example. And so just being able to take that information, it enables me to respond a lot better. One of the things I didn't notice was that it translates to real life as well. One of the lessons I learned was that how you fight is exactly how you are in your day-to-day life. A good example is I'm generally defensive. What I mean by that is I usually wait for the other person to come to attack, and then I'll respond. In my day-to-day, I do exactly the same thing. So now I had this temper issue. So let's say one time my boss said I was really shit at my job. That really, really frustrated me. I couldn't think, couldn't do nothing. And I just kept trying, but I got to a point where I was just like, I've had it. After going through my martial arts journey, diffusing myself with the temper, now I get to see my boss a lot more clearer now. And I can respond appropriately. So now, whereby before, in my temper, I would be like, okay, you said I'm shit at my job, I'm going to prove you wrong. But then it comes at a detriment to myself, because I'm working at a place that I have no interest in, and I'm doing it to prove a point just due to my temper. It doesn't benefit me in the long run. Yeah, I might get the satisfaction at the end of it, but in the long term, it doesn't do me anything. After diffusing all my negative energy, that's when I decided to leave this job, and I was like, okay, boom, got a new job. And that's when I'd say my career started, and that's where life really did start for me. I was a lot more open to other things. I think one of the things I forgot to mention in my early part of my life was I remember having a kind of like a debate, and one of my friends pointed out, he was in university, and he said, I'm very quick to jump when someone had an opposing opinion. So just going back to the analogy of when you're filled with this negative energy and this temper, and I was filled with this negative energy and temper, it wouldn't allow me to hear any other person's opinions that contradicted mine. If you weren't agreeing with me, you triggered me. And so that basically meant we're going to argue at all. Having a temper doesn't mean that you're swinging your fists around or you're hurting everyone. It can also be an internal thing as well. And I would say that internal temper, people keep their tempers internal, their angers internal. I would say that they're some of the most dangerous people, because they're the kind of individuals that will kind of decide, all right, I want the whole world to burn. So I would say keep an eye out for those individuals and see and help them if you can. So what worked for me was going through martial arts. I like the idea of just diffusing the situation physically, because for me it's kind of like as I was sparring and I was hitting the pads, it felt like that negative energy was seeping out of me. And once it's all seeped out of me, now I'm ready to take in a whole load more information. Does that? So, just going through during my journey. So now it's enabled me to now become more, let's say, more receptive to other people's opinions now. So as opposed to if someone gives a contradictory opinion, I'm more inclined I want to hear a contradictory opinion. I am not in the mind of having self-confirmation bias, for example. I would like to hear all different opinions, for example, because it helps me grow, because then I can work out, okay, is what I'm thinking, have I got things a little bit wrong? Am I on the right path, for example? And most of all, it's relieving. It's so, being filled with so much anger and temper, again, it's it keeps you focused. It really does. But I can honestly promise you, it's not worth what you give up. You give up a lot more for it. A life of being kind of generally being unhappy. So I wouldn't say I was the most unhappiest person in the world, but I could honestly say that I had a bit of problems. Again, I hate to say it, but it's kind of inherited from my father a little bit. But through martial arts and counselling, I did go through counselling. It helped. Now thinking about it now, one of the things where my temper did not help was in my relationships. That's weird. Now, I'm going to be the first one to say I'm not physical in my relationships, but there's such thing as mental abuse, and sometimes you don't even realize that you're doing it because you're so caught up in yourself. You don't even realize what you're doing to your loved ones and the people you care about. I was in a relationship with a wonderful woman, and I got so wrapped up in my own temper, and she was I would say, a casualty of it. So much so that once we broke it off, it was kind of like this dark cloud had lifted, and then I just realized instantly everything that I'd done was wrong. And again, it was another lesson. So now I'm a lot more conscientious, and I'm a lot more hearing of my partner and of people around me. So with regards to relationships, it's important keeping your temper under control. That's not to say you shouldn't have one. It's good to have a bit of fire in your belly. Don't diffuse it. I mean, I took it to one extreme where I had no fire, and it's kind of like, okay, once I diffused that, it was like this temper who's been my best friend for the last 20 years. Where is he? I had that emptiness. I would say have it there, have it on amber, but don't let it fill your cup up. I really recommend that. With regards to having that fire, so now you've got this thing that you need to replace it with. Now you've emptied your cup, you need to replace it with. Now, what I replaced it with was, I would say, more love and commonality for me. So again, approaching every situation with a sense of calmness, but also being able to see everything, see everything about taking all the information. Again, I've taken it to an extreme where I take in a lot of information, but then I also sometimes I may disregard some of my thoughts because I've got this thing that I know that I had before. Hence me explaining that it's important to also have that fire, that little bit of fire, but also control that fire. Don't let that fire control you. I do have instances where I let that fire get out of control. There's one time I was playing work football. There's a football league for work, and let's say one of my teammates, he was being really greedy with the ball. I said, pass the ball so then I could score the goal. And I lashed out at him, lashed out at him. And then in the moment, it felt really good. It's one of the things about a temper. When you release it, it feels good for this while you're in the moment. But then the second you come back to your stage of normality, especially in this particular case, I felt an instant sense of regret because it's not constructive. It's not constructive. I let my temper use me as opposed to using my temper. With my wife, as you know, partners, they can drive you up the duff. You know, they drive you insane, both men and women. All those experiences that I have, whenever I have an argument with my partner, not saying that you should. Well, they do say arguments a bit healthy, but I never go straight towards the negative thoughts immediately. I always hear what they've got to say first, and then respond appropriately. My journey has helped me nurture a healthy relationship with my partner and with other people as well, and even my JKD classmates as well.